Hello viewers, the timestamps for this video will be in the description below, so if you'd like to skip to a particular section of this video, then go ahead and do so. Let's begin. So I want to outline a few of the player goals in DBD. So the killer goal is to kill all the survivors, so the less amount of generators that gets completed, the better. And the survivor goal is to complete all the generators and escape through either the gates or the hatch. Each of these sides of the game have different tactics they use in order to complete their objective. So let's go ahead and start with the survivor tactic. So one of the edges that the survivors can gain against the killer is their gen efficiency. So how efficient are they when it comes to completing the generators? If the team has a low gen efficiency, that may mean that one player is just running around willy-nilly, not really completing a generator at all, just maybe they just cannot find it, and maybe another survivor is just trying to cleanse a dull boon totem, or a dull totem, sorry. So having a lower gen efficiency means that the killer has more time to complete their objective, which means that the killer can go for more hooks and nicer plays, or just not punishing the survivor team for making mistakes as harshly as they could. Now, a team with higher gen efficiency will give the killer less time to complete his or her objective, which means that the killer will have to get their hook states faster in order to complete their objective before the game ends. So, the game has, the devs have added 10 seconds to the generator repair speed, so they added 10 seconds. It was 80 seconds to complete the gen, now it's 90. And this has increased the total amount of time to complete all the generators for 50 seconds. Now, I don't think this has really had a massive impact on gameplay. And you'll definitely see in a minute through my explanations why maybe that's the case. I would also keep in mind that Prove Thyself is a perk that exists. So Prove Thyself will increase gen efficiency for more than one player repairing a gen at a time. So I believe it's 52.9 seconds to complete a gen with 2 survivors repairing when one of them has Prove Thyself. So and this was taken off of like all these stats I'm using, they're taken off of the wiki from DBD. So let's go ahead and move on to some of the killer efficiency stats. So they did buff the killer kick, so now it only takes 1.8 seconds to either kick a pallet or kick a generator to start the regression. So the kick also takes off 2.5% of the progression of the generator, which equals 2.25 seconds of time that the survivors have to take to repair 2.5%. So, and the generators regress a quarter of the speed that one survivor can repair it at. So if the generator is nearly finished, it's just as close as it can be to almost being done, and the killer kicks it, he'll take off that 2.5% and it'll start regressing. That regression, in order to get from say 99.99% down to 0, it will take around 360 seconds. That just takes forever, right? Of course, that's without with no perks. So I definitely see some arguments that survivors think that, they try to use as an argument that, hey, the killer, they got this buffed kick. What about this, right? Isn't this somewhat powerful? But it's really not a tool that the killer can rely on. It equals about, I think, 0.45 seconds. If you think about it in terms of the killer's time spent to regress a generator versus the survivor's time spent in order to repair that amount, they've wasted 0.45 seconds of the survivor's time. But it's really not 0.45 seconds either, because let's say you kick a generator and you walk away and the survivor gets right back on it. It will take them literally nearly 0 time to repair back what you just kicked, and you just spent 1.8 seconds of your time kicking it. And even while you were kicking it, there were probably multiple other survivors across the map repairing other generators, so it literally did not affect the team at all. Truly, without some sort of regression or slowdown perk, the killer is definitely going to struggle, and this kick means absolutely nothing. Even the 1.8 seconds for kicking pallets, sorry, it doesn't mean anything. The survivors will get to another pallet some way or another, either through their dead hard or lithe or some way. They'll make it to another pallet or vault window usually. So let's talk about some of the tactics that the killer uses in order to complete their objective. So one of them is tunneling. I think that some killers tunnel survivors out for toxicity reasons, but I also think that many do it because they think it's necessary. Let me explain why. So if you're going to achieve 12 hook states for all the survivors, which means you kill all the survivors and it takes 3 hook states in order to kill all of them, then you have to have an average of 2.4 hooks per generator completed to 12 hook the entire team by 5 gens being completed. Now in higher MMR games, you'll likely see that the killer will get 1 hook, maybe 2 hooks, for 2 to 3 gens being completed. And we both know that that is well below the average 12 that you need to 12 hook the entire team. So we could use tunneling. Now tunneling out a survivor will cause a drop by 25% gen efficiency. So at best, survivors are at 75% of their normal efficiency when it comes to repairing gens, and it could drop to 50%, because if you chase 1 survivor and 1's dead, that means at best 2 survivors are on generators. That's 50% gen efficiency, and that's fantastic. If there's a survivor on death hook, so 1 more hook and they're dead, and say they're injured and they're trying to run away from you, and you're just barreling after them, you could have a body blocker or 2 body blockers. If you have 2 body blockers plus the injured survivor you're chasing, that means 25% gen efficiency. Only 1 survivor could possibly be repairing a generator at that time, which also helps extend the game and allow you to get more hooks to kill more survivors. Do I think that tunneling should always be used? No. I think that sometimes the killer needs to not tunnel a survivor out, because if they tunnel the stronger survivor out of all of them in the team, say the one that can loop you for the longest, then you'll just waste more and more time. It may cause you to lose the game. It'd be much better for the killer to just tunnel out a weaker link, because even a weak link can just hold mouse 1 on a generator, right? Let's talk about another tactic that killers use: camping. So this is another great way to generate pressure. So I'll give you an example. 1 survivor's on a hook, 1 is slug, and the efficiency is 0 to 50%. Right? So if it's 50%, that means 2 survivors are on a generator and they're not going for the save at all, which means you're slowly killing 2 players, which is, in terms of endgame, great for the killer. If it's 0%, that means 2 survivors are going for the save to save the other 2 survivors, the one that's hooked and the one that's downed, and that means no one's repairing a generator, which means you're also winning. If it's 25%, 1 survivor has to come over and try to save 2 people. Obviously, they can't do it at the same time, so there's probably going to be some trades and just more down people, and it's another win for the killer. So there's definitely a lot of utility when it comes to camping in that situation. Another situation would be if, say, you are kind of hovering around a hook and you spot 2 survivors also hovering around trying to get the save, seeing when you're gonna leave, and maybe you spot them and they know you spot them, and they'll try to click their flashlight at you and try to get you to try to get you to enter a chase with them so that they can lead you away from the hook so that their teammate can get the save, right? But if you don't leave the hook, which would be more of a tactical decision, then you have 1 survivor on hook who's slowly dying, and 2 more survivors which are doing nothing but just staring at you, right? They're not completing generators, and that means the gen efficiency can only be as high as 25%, and that means you're winning. So camping is a really, really good strategy. It can work to your detriment sometimes. Say if you try to camp the first person you hook, right? And they've already have 2 to 3 gens completed. Well, they're probably gonna get at least 3-man escape, because if they're on comm, say, or they know what you're up to, they'll just smash out the remaining gens and just escape, no problem. Maybe you get a 2K if you're lucky. Right, so you could also use it in the event that maybe you have no way out, so you can extend the amount of time you have. So say one gen's gonna pop, you know it's gonna pop, you have a guy that's bleeding out, and if he bleeds out, he dies. Then on the hook, then you could just camp that guy out, and maybe they repair the last generator, but you have no way out, so it doesn't matter. And then you end up getting that guy camped out of the game, and you could potentially get a 2K or more. So it's a really good tool for killers to create pressure on the survivors, get them off those generators so that they have more time to complete their objective. So let's answer some big questions. Do I think that tunneling and camping is a problem in DBD? Yeah, I could agree with that, because a lot of killers want to tunnel and camp, but some killers only use it in their end game because, and you can tell, because they want to get a kill, they want to win their objective, right? And this is just it's just some of the tools they have at their disposal in order to complete their objective. And especially against those higher gen efficient teams, this, you just have to slow them down some way. You know, the devs, they nerfed a lot of the killer regression perks, right, and slowdown perks. I mean, there's always going to be a new meta because of regression or slowdown perks, because you just have to try to slow down as much as possible, right? I mean, you had Pop Goes a Weasel and Ruin, they nerfed that, and then you have Thana, and they nerfed that, and they're probably going to go after Pentimento next. Pentimento combined with Hex Plaything, right? And the devs obviously want to stop tunneling and camping because they are adding more time to BT, so they're going to make it 10 seconds, right? And they increase the haste percentage for survivors. But I don't think what the devs don't understand, what the survivors, a lot of survivors don't understand, and they get very, very mad at in-game chat, they don't understand that the killer objective takes a lot more time than the survivor objective. There's only one killer, and there's 4 survivors. So mathematically, the survivors can be progressing their objective much quicker, I would say, than the killer can. Now, if they mess up, and if the survivor team continuously, like consistently, makes mistakes, then that's great. But if they don't, then, you know, the killer is really dependent on those mistakes. It helps them out a lot to start building pressure, right? If they can't get any pressure, you know, maybe the killer or the survivors start W keying away as soon as the killer gets even near them, right? Maybe they're on comms or something. Then it's just near impossible to get a hit, to use the killer's power, just to do a lot of things. Of course, depending on the killer, but it can be absolutely disastrous, right? So, but I think that tunneling camping is boring gameplay for the killers. It just causes them to go for kills instead of hooks, and instead of more chases, which is not nearly as fun, right? Just playing tactical. And for the survivors, it's certainly not as fun, because they're just sitting on a hook doing nothing, right? the next worst thing than holding mouse 1 on a generator the entire game. And then you also have tunneling, right? And that's not fun for the survivor either. But I hope they understand that they do it because, you know, most killers do it, I'd say, because they're just trying to get their objective done, and they're, you know, they're just smashing out the gens. And I don't think it's appropriate for survivors to complain about killers using these tactics, because it seems like they underestimate their edge, their gen efficiency. You know, and they're probably just upset anyways, right? Because it's really, really boring gameplay. But if I was to try to implement some solutions, some steps towards solving this problem, I would say that you would need to equalize the generator efficiency across all teams, right? Because this makes it a lot easier to balance. If you increase the time it takes to complete generators, which is what some people argue, I would say that would not really affect Swifts too much, depending, you know, within a reasonable amount of increase. But for survivor queue teams, it would make it impossible because survivor queue teams are much less efficient, right? And there's just no way to communicate through them. But if you did increase the gen efficiency for solo queue teams by increasing communication ability, so you add a ping system and probably a voice chat system would be nice as well, right? That would make things a lot more even between solo queue teams and Swifts, right? Survive with Friends. Now, just doing this alone will not solve this problem, right? It would be another band-aid fix, but it would really break the game. You know, a lot of killers would probably leave and mess up queue times, everything all over again, right? And we don't want that. So I would say you probably need to equalize it, right, by increasing communication for for solo queue survivor teams. But you also need to give the killer a little bit of edge, a little bit more something, right? So maybe at that point you could increase the time it takes to repair generators, right? Maybe increase the killer's ability to regress the generators or slow down the generators, right? Because perks obviously aren't going to cut at this point because they're just going to keep getting nerfed, right? Unless the devs actually kind of acknowledge this potential, this problem that we have in DBD. But I definitely want to encourage that both killers and survivors understand each other, understand, you know, like killers understanding survivors when they, you know, get tunneled out and they get camped, like why they would be angry. But I also think survivors should really try to understand because, you know, a lot of them act toxic towards killers and they think that they do they use their tactics in order to just be toxic, but in reality it's usually because they just want to win the game. You know, we all want to have fun, right? That's why we play these games. I don't think it's appropriate to suggest that killers should try to play nicer, right? So the survivors can essentially win the game, but the killers left just not completing their objective and not doing what they're supposed to do, right? So it's a really messy situation, but I'd like to know what y'all think about this whole situation, maybe how you would fix some of these problems, right? So write down some comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video.